been driven, I think, this is my own theory, but I've seen it confirmed in articles. It's been driven by high-profile media cases of product failure, products harming small children or elderly people, vulnerable populations. And it's been driven by increasing desire to involve government and business, which is also a trend that has taken place over the last few decades. And government regulates very well, and government especially is an entity that specializes in compelling marketing disclosure. Now, often this disclosure has been perfunctory. So, for instance, in the field of credit cards, what we see is a lot of very perfunctory disclosure going on in the form of, you know, a tract length treatise of all the things that could go wrong with your credit card. If you do this, your rates will go to that, or if you do that, then we will retaliate by doing this, and so on and so forth. And it's the kind of a tract that nobody really reads because it's just perfunctory. It's not real disclosure. It's meant only to fulfill legal expectations and requirements. That's not just true in credit cards. It's true also in a lot of different areas. There certainly isn't a lot of business these days, much dragging of the feet when it comes to complying with government regulations and operating in a caveat venditor system. Now, the strength of the caveat venditor system is it does tend to protect weak and vulnerable customers. So you have recourse if I sell you product that fails and I know it to be a failure, and I market it as a success, but it turns out not to do what it's marketed as doing. You have legal recourse. And you actually have a variety of consumer tools which you can appeal to in order to track me down and in order to bring me to justice. So that's a great strength of the system. At the same time, it has certain weaknesses as well. The system of caveat venditor is, generally speaking, a more expensive system. It is a system that is less innovative. It's less creative. It requires that more time be spent on lots of beta, gamma, and delta tests on products. It requires that more time be spent on legal teams to, to protect companies against potential liability. It tends to be more expensive for consumers to purchase products under caveat venditor than it is for them to purchase product under caveat emptor. The buyer beware system that reigned in this country until really World War II and to some extent after that as well was a system that offered comparatively cheaper products if all other factors are held equal. In comparison to a caveat venditor system, its products were not as expensive because consumers were not paying for companies to engage in a whole bunch of special disclosures, to hire a bunch of legal personnel, and to test their products many, many, many times over. At the same time, though, as mentioned, it was a more dangerous, open economic system for persons who did not know how to navigate it, for persons who did not know how to do their due diligence or to protect themselves. And generally speaking, it was a system that probably was not the best system for the lower classes socioeconomically in this country. It was a system that tends to favor capitalist business persons who are ruthless or who desire to get ahead at the expense of weak or feeble persons. At the same time, though, again, it has certain attractions for me as I look back at it. For instance, the way that ethics was regulated under the caveat emptor system was by means of reputation. If you had a good reputation as a company in the caveat emptor system, people would purchase your product. But if your reputation failed, woe to you as a business person. Customers would flee in droves. They may not have legal recourse, but they sure could vote with their feet and not purchase your product next time around and spread the word about how they don't want to for others to purchase your product as well. So again, maybe there were certain mechanisms of recourse in the caveat emptor system which were attractive. At any rate, though, today we are dominated by the caveat venditor system. You should go into marketing and into the ethics of marketing with the expectation that the onus and the responsibility legally will almost always be upon the seller to demonstrate the success of the product, to demonstrate full disclosure, all the things that could go wrong with the product, and so on and so forth. I have been reminded of this recently. I have little children, and if you look at kids' products, the warning labels on them are just incredible. They basically say, warning, if your child uses this product, your child will strangle, in all caps, or your child will fall under the stroller and be run over. The levels that marketers these days have to go to in order to protect themselves from legal liabilities and potential civil penalties, professionally and to some extent personally, are really quite comical. But that is the culture legally that we live in these days. It is the culture in terms of marketing that we live in these days as well. Finally, the last general comment that I wanted to make in this introductory lecture is a comment about the field of data gathering and privacy management. This has blown up in an incredible way in the last 10 years or so, 15 years maybe, especially with the rise of Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, WhatsApp, all of the social media apps that have become so popular. And to some extent, quite frankly, the social media apps are surveillance devices. Whenever anything is free in life, this is just a good rule of thumb for all of you Facebook users who are using their product for free. Whenever anything is free, it is safe to assume that you are not consuming a product, at least in the eyes of the company. Rather, you are the product, and their customers, their consumers, are some other group. And in Facebook's case, you are the product from the standpoint of their business model. You, the user, are their product, and they are peddling you to the companies that sign up for data and that gather data from Facebook's customers. Now, maybe that's worth it. I think that the great majority of Americans consider selling their data or really giving their data to Facebook to be worth it in order to connect to friends and family across far distances and across time and space in the way that they want to do so. But the point is, I guess, just to be aware of that relationship and also to begin to acquire an understanding of the ethics of that relationship. The primary controversies in the field of data gathering and social media surveillance and online internet marketing ethics and so forth tend to revolve around privacy. They, to some extent, revolve around the disclosure of information without consumers' knowledge, without consumers' agreement, although Facebook and these other social media companies do have you sign disclosure agreements. They're very long, they're very complicated, and nobody ever reads them. But they do have you sign these. And to some extent, the issues in this field revolve around the question of even if people do agree to disclose their information, to what extent ought the social media companies to be able to just spread that information around and to sell it to what kinds of purchasers. Okay, so the issue of surveillance for data gathering has blown up in large part because of the great success of data gathering. This is truly a revolutionary frontier in marketing and in marketing ethics. It is revolutionary because now, for the first time really ever, advertisers in capitalist economies can target their ads in the most minute ways. So you may, in your day-to-day life, still see general purpose ads, But in your online life, in your streaming life, in your YouTube life, your ads have become very, very targeted indeed. If you drive along the highway and look at billboards, chances are most of those billboards are scattershot type ads. Most of those billboards, the great majority of them, will not apply to you at all. By contrast, when I look at my Facebook feed, I see really just two kinds of advertisements. I see advertisements for church products and advertisements for academic publishers, academic books. So you know me, Christian professor, business ethics professor. Those are the kinds of ads that Facebook has decided that I want to see. And to some extent, that's a good thing, at least from my perspective. I don't see a lot of ads that I don't want to see, a lot of ads that are irrelevant. But to a certain extent, though, it's also quite frightening, I suppose, because Facebook and other social media companies know a lot about us now. And much of the controversy surrounding the ethics of the surveillance of the targeted data gathering that's taking place in marketing these days revolves around precisely that degree of information that these companies know and have about us. At any rate, I do want to explore these topics at greater length, especially in the inspection and subsequent talks of some case studies. Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to unpacking these topics with you.